SMT Nation, we back. Nation, big news out of T-Mobile. They hit a network mark, one that is very substantial, and actually, they got a couple. So let's talk about both. The article actually, I think it's from T-Mobile News. I came across the business wireline website, but it's big for them. You know, they're the first to really, I guess, reach this mark and accomplish the task, which is very encouraging. And I think a lot of folks, you know, they've seen this day coming. I think it was just a matter of time. But T-Mobile, you know, kind of overachieving a bit and you know, under promising, over delivering type approach, and it's worked out for them. Anyways, I'm gonna discuss two different things here with this news release, and we'll explain, you know, the implications to the customers and the experience on the network. Our article will be linked in the description. Ways to support the SMT also there as well. All right, so the title of the article: T-Mobile's ultra capacity 5G now covers 300 million people. A bit of an error there. What this should say is their low band 5G covers 330 million people, I believe. Okay, so the two pieces of this network announcement are pretty simple and straightforward. T-Mobile's 5G UC network is their mid-band 5G build out, and that has hit 300 million pops or points of presence across the country. So it's a very robust national build. This is a piece of their network that brings the capacity to it, that allows them to do fixed wireless access and give customers a very fast data experience when they use the network. So the N41, the 2.5 gigahertz that they utilized from the Sprint acquisition, and then subsequently built over the course of the last 3 and 4 years, has now hit the 300 million pops mark. All right, the first carrier to do it in any meaningful way, to go with a large swath bandwidth spectrum. Now, it isn't without its faults. You know, T-Mobile does have a fragmented license holding situation with N41. So there are parts across the country where they only have 20 or 40 megahertz of N41. Some places it's like 60 or 80. It's a little bit disjointed and non-contiguous. They're trying to work through those things and get that spectrum from Spectrum Auction 108 to make it a much more uniform and robust experience. So they hit that mark first to do it, and that's phenomenal. In addition to that, T-Mobile also reaches 330 million pops of their low-band 5G network. That frequency being lower allows it to propagate much better. That's your indoor coverage with your uplink throughput, gives you a signal farther and that sort of thing. So what they call the layer cake approach is really just, you know, the low band and the mid band. They don't do millimeter wave. They don't really have much CRAN, right, and small cells, but they have a very robust 5G UC build and low band 5G network, right? It's available basically everywhere you go. That's what this announcement is really about. The 5G UC and the 5G low band, you know, is ubiquitous across the country, and it's meaningful. You drive all over the country and you see a lot of it, right? So regardless of the state, you know, it's mostly gonna have a presence. I know there's a handful of states where T-Mobile is weak, you know, so, you know, don't at me and tell me how awful it is in some place. I know it's not good in Maine. I've spoken to some folks about that. You know, out west, T-Mobile is the weakest of the big three, so they're not infallible. They do have weakness, and those are things they can continue to work on to be more competitive with AT&T and FirstNet and Verizon with their legendary, you know, larger network, right? So they've hit their mark. They've done this. Interestingly enough, you know, the question now becomes is, you know, what is T-Mobile going to do? You know, they hit 300 million pops of N41 5G UC. Do they try to push for more? I mean, I think they do. Wherever T-Mobile builds their network, it makes them a player, right? License to play. What is it that Eugene Sweaty Armpits used to say? License to kill, whatever. I don't know what he says, but they might want to build more, but that's likely going to require more tower sites, right? And that means building in rural America, where the return on invested capital is very low. So how motivated are they to go beyond 300 million pops of N41? Probably not too much. You know, over the course of the next year, could we see some new builds, some organic network expansion of the 5G UC? maybe a peak of like 310 million pops additionally over the next year or two. But I think that's probably it. I think they're mostly at their mark. I think what's going to happen here, folks, is the next phase of their network is going to be densification in metro and suburbia, right? To address, things like weaker signal, where you're just on low band and the mid band doesn't reach. They're simply just going to have to add sites. And I think the CRAN piece, right? They're going to have to do small cells. A lot of people say that they think, T-Mobile's strategy is good. Folks, the strategies are all the same. Every network operates on the same principles. It's just who's willing to spend. Now, my concern for T-Mobile is I see their CapEx is relaxing, right? And they got to pay shareholders dividends now. They have share buybacks they want to do. We hear them in talks about acquiring fiber, Frontier, US Cellular. That will put the kapush on a network expansion, right? They don't have the free cash flow to do all those things. They're new to free cash flow, right? They just became free cash flow positive recently, like in the last year. So we'll see how that goes. But I think this is basically pinnacle, 5G UC reach, where basically the competition has to catch up. They didn't have that same 5G stimulus from the Sprint merger and such, but the AT&T situation, their pace is a little slower than Verizon's. Verizon's like a bat out of hell flying, trying to catch up and get back to their network excellence, of having the biggest network and a capacitive experience. Their network has become very legacy in a lot of rural places, and that's going to be the next step for them, right? Upgrading rural, and then same time trying to densify and add small cells and CRAN and millimeter wave in urban and even suburban. So now that T-Mobile's kind of reached that peak, they've got to reinvest in their network. They've got DoD and C-band that they can build. They've got over 100 million pops of both of those holdings, to different bandwidths. They've got to get that stuff on there. They got to stop bullshitting there. Their work's not done. This is a great accomplishment for them. Congratulations to them. But now that they're a big telco, there's expectations, and you can't stop. You're going to have to continue to build. And I'm not poo-pooing on T-Mobile. This is just objective commentary about their holdings and their position as a company. I know red thongs get aggravated whenever someone questions the infallible, T-Mobile. And yes, I agree. They are the 5G GOAT when it comes to the availability of that network. But we do have to evaluate them objectively. That's what we do here. That's what separates us from everything else. So congrats to T-Mobile. The work has to continue. And again, I don't have to drive this point home much longer because I think people understand where I am. I still think they have to fix their calling quality, and I hope some of these upgrades and the densification process brings that to the forefront. What do you guys think? Sound off in the comment section below. You are the voice of the people, the SMT Nation. Let your voice be heard.